Leo, how would you just sum up the way it ended? Came very close, but obviously short in the end.
Yeah, the first thing is Northampton were excellent, I thought. So, we sat here yesterday talking about how strong Northampton are in terms of some of their attacking threats and what they're capable of doing. I think you saw that at lots of different parts of the game. I think we do plenty of good things. We're maybe a little bit inaccurate at different stages in the first half. And I thought Northampton were very good in terms of some of their counter-attack. And they hit us just on the counter a couple of times with some sucker punch tries. So Tommy Freeman, in terms of I thought he was excellent in terms of speed to finish. He scored his hat trick in the first half. And quite often then when you fall behind, we get a little bit jittery, don't we? And we're not quite accurate enough in some of the things we do, and we compound errors. On the flip side is we do lots of good things as well. We get ourselves in lots of good positions. And towards the end of the game, we look the stronger team finishing the game, but we're just not quite accurate enough. And then there's a couple of calls don't go our way, and that's unfortunately can be the game at sometimes. And it's the dressing room. It's a pretty somber place in there, as you can imagine. You set off at the start of the season. Now the finals in Cardiff. Everything is building towards that. Everyone's imagining themselves. Every team, I'm sure, is imagining themselves there in the final. There's so much work that goes into getting to a team to a semi-final. When you lose, it's pretty horrific, and that's the feeling that we're experiencing at the moment. Because I think the group are like, it's just one of those games you'd love to have another crack at it straight away, but unfortunately, you don't get that opportunity, and that's sport. So not many people were giving Northampton a chance going into the game, and they come away with a famous victory. Unfortunately, it's at our expense. But as I said at the start, you can't take anything away from them. The way they set out their stall, some of the things they executed, how clinical they were, and even come up with a way to hold us out at the end. I'm not sure how they managed to do it, but they managed to do it. It's pretty horrific feeling, unfortunately, for the group right now.
They played well. There's no taking that away from them. But do you think Leinster played as well as they could have given semi-final in Europe, or do you think there's a lot more there Leinster could have done on a better day and didn't let it out there?
Yeah, I think there's definitely strong feeling amongst our group, that we haven't done ourselves fully justice, basically. So, what's the reason for that? I don't know. That's the great mystery, isn't it? A couple of things were just not quite accurate. Had some opportunities, as in we had a ton of opportunities, just didn't quite deliver. But then when you can get a little bit jittery. But then with saying all that, the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, we're camped in our try line. And again, we just don't have that quite composure to be able to get over the line. And that's the painful learning, unfortunately, for us. So there's nothing we can do about this, and we can talk about this all bloody day here. Unfortunately, it's dead and buried now. And all we can turn our attention is to the next challenge, which is back to our domestic competition, URC. We play Zebra here next week. We need to try and beat Zebra, try and finish top of the log. We always talk about the importance of home advantage knockout games. We had a home advantage today. It didn't actually matter, unfortunately, because Northampton came here and have managed to do a number on us. So, but we can move on to the next challenge, and it's one that'll probably stick in the throat for the players for a long time.
We couldn't quite hear the referee's explanation for the call a minute from Tom, did you?
I haven't looked at it closely enough. I'll have a look back properly, so it'd be a bit unfair for me to comment at the moment. So, there was so many different things going on. It looked like it was going to be a try. It wasn't. Obviously, then it's we're sort of okay. Well, if it's not a try, what's the next thing? And I don't know. You saw there was a ping in the background for Tommy, so we were trying to manage that there as well. So I haven't watched it back since. So anyway, it's just one of those moments. There was a few probably moments there at the end which unfortunately don't come out at the right end of some of those calls. And in tight games, sometimes that's what comes down to, as painful as that is to say. So unfortunately, it's not there to be for us today.
Leo, can you describe what the referee said to you? Just on Neil's question.
Caelan was off at that stage.
Who was captain at that?
Jack was captain at that stage.
Okay. Do we know what he said to Jack?
No, as I said, I haven't watched it back yet. Yeah.
And Jack didn't explain it to you,
I haven't been into him there. No.
Caelan,
Quite there, yeah.
After defending so well in the quarter-final round of 16 games, not conceding a try, how disconcerting was it when a period in the first half it seemed like they could score every time they attacked?
Yeah, I think part of that, like Leo mentioned, is credit to them. They had a very good plan, which they executed very well. We were aware from what we've seen of them and from facing them last year of how dangerous they can be in attack, and especially a bit unstructured off-kick battles, like guys like Tommy Freeman, who was very dangerous and converted quite a few today. But then obviously there's some stuff that we weren't good enough at, some of the basics in terms of our collision. We put a lot of work into the collision dominance, and when that's not there at the centre of the D, it's hard to do much from that.
You won a penalty at the end, which could have kicked for the post to draw the game. Were you frustrated with that decision, or were you trying to get messages on, or is it the case of just backing it there?
Absolutely back it, yeah. So I think it's important. Listen, like the players have a feel on the field, like, and they're all in on there. Yeah, listen, I back their bravery to go and win the game there. This doesn't come off. So listen, everyone's a genius in hindsight, aren't they? But listen, at the moment, listen, these guys fancy it, and I'd back them 100%. So I'm all clear on the all in from their minds. It's good.
Jody Barrett had a massive impact in the second half when he came on. Did you have any regrets around not starting?
Well, listen, I will look back at lots of different things over the course of the last couple of weeks, and yes, there's when you don't win a game, particularly in a semi-final, you know everyone's going to be able to second guess everything. And yeah, listen, Jordy brought huge impact, and that's what we wanted from him. Similar with Jack Conan as well, and a lot of other players that were on the bench. So listen, you look at us at the end of the game, we look like a strong team attacking the game. There's probably bits before that were just not quite accurate enough. But listen, I don't have regrets about that plan specifically, no.
Caelan, as captain, what was your message to the players inside after the match?
Stay tight. The journey's not over yet. Process it together and stay tight, and turn the page then over the next couple of days.
After so much build up, people making you heavy favourites for this game, trouncing your last two opponents in this competition, making the final 4 years in a row, and I think the bookies had a spread of 20 on this game for your side. To what extent do you think there was almost with that expectation that this would be a formality, that there was any complacency crept into the side today?
I think there's always an expectancy. Listen, everyone's worked hard year on year to try and get the group better. Okay, so I think we've assembled a good group of players. A lot of guys have come through the pathway. So much work goes into that. There's a group of coaches and a backroom team that work incredibly hard. Why? Because there's a strong desire to achieve in this tournament. Is there a complacency? I don't think so. I think there is a strong desire all the time. Unfortunately, in any game, there's two teams. Northampton came with a good plan, and they executed incredibly well, and they were very clinical, as I said, in terms of some on the counter. Because of the pressure and expectation, I don't think that's a complacency thing. I think that's more about there's a little bit of a desperation as we want to be successful, and maybe that there's a lack of a little bit of composure there. So I don't quite buy that around complacency. I think there's a sort of, do you understand what I mean about it? There's a group of players, staff that are very desperate to be successful, which says a lot about how much we value this tournament. Okay, but now we just need to process that, as Caelan said, and turn our attention to the next thing, because it's very challenging as we know, trying to juggle two tournaments. How do you go flip-flop between one and the other? And that's one of the challenges obviously we've had, getting to finals, and can you turn your attention back to URC, particularly obviously over the last 3 seasons where we've lost in finals, okay, and we haven't gone on to be able to win the URC. So in the last 3 seasons we've fallen at a semi-final hurdle. So what can we control now? Listen, unfortunately, I'd love to say talk about getting ready for a final in Cardiff, but now we're getting ready to try and win the URC, and that's it. It's a singular focus. So we need to turn that desire is a desperation to win Champions Cup into URC. So that's what we really need to make a decision as a group, that's where we want to go. As I said, we have 2 regular season games. We would love to get ready for a final, but we're not. It'll be watching on with absolute envy, realistically, isn't it? Like, how else could you put it? So we need for as Caelan touched on, people leaving, and most importantly, to people that support us. So because a lot of players come through the system here, they're looking into the crowd of family, friends, people who've supported them their whole lives. So we need to do that group of people justice as well. So the beauty of where the group has got us to ourselves in this competition is, as in the URC competition, we're sitting top by 8 points. We beat Zebra this weekend. It means we get a home run through to a final. But as we know now, there's no guarantees with any of that. So I admire Northampton last year because they lost the semi-final. What did they do? They dust themselves off, learned the lessons, go on and win the Premiership. We needed the equivalent of that, which is dust ourselves off, get ready for 2 URC games and try to get through a sequence of knockout games, which is quarter-final, semi-final, final.
Looking at the reaction your side today had to, as you mentioned, the counter-attack and the sucker punch that Northampton gave you. Looking at those games, the 2 previous rounds of this competition where you found things so easy with getting past those games with relative ease, would you almost rather had more difficult games?
But it's hindsight. Literally anything is going to be better than what we've just done because we haven't won the game. Northampton rack up pretty big scores as well. You know what I mean? So it's not like they've come in off the back of 2 nail biters, have they? Like, they've come in, they played 2 Champions Cup games against 2 tough bloody French teams as well. In Clermont, who we know we struggled to put away here. Cast, again, a team we played against over the years. So they've rounded up big scores. So it's not like there's any shock element to that. They've scored a lot of tries. They've rested pretty much their whole group for their Newcastle away game, and then they rolled out, put on a big score against Bristol at home last week. So and unfortunately, it's not like we weren't alert to the threats that they had, but unfortunately, yes, in hindsight, if we had got a tighter game, possibly would that have served us better? Listen, I don't know.
Sorry, Caelan, would you have ever previously felt disappointed after losing a rugby game? How do you now feel?
They're always pretty horrific. Obviously, we're in the midst of this one, so I'm feeling it right now, but yeah.
Leo, I appreciate you put everything into this and you care as much as anyone, if not more than anyone. But after all of these disappointments, are you confident that you can lead this team to a Champions Cup? That you are the right person to take this organisation?
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah, listen, I believe that I am. Yes, I think we've worked hard in terms of trying to improve the group year on year on year, and I think the group is very strong right now. But as I said, that's off the back of, that's not something that's just created last week. It's over year on year. I think we have a stronger group now. We've lost 3 finals, over the last 3 years. But I believe we have a stronger group now than we've had. So, and that's the way I will continue to approach the day-to-day in terms of preparing for the short-term, medium-term, long-term. So yes. And I'm very committed to that as well.
Caelan, do you think there was a different intensity today with Northampton than there was in the corresponding game last season at Croke Park?
Possibly. I mean, it was a different nature game, obviously much more high scoring today. They had a few consecutive scores off the back of some of the kick battles, like I mentioned, towards the end of the first half. Some of them were unstructured and within a couple of phases, so it was different last year. Like we've both said today and yesterday, their attack is obviously very impressive, and we saw that and witnessed it firsthand today, but we've seen it over the last number of weeks too.